Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen News Digest. Now Kodak, through photography, brings you this edition of the Screen...
Hello everybody, this is Skip Alzheimer, hoping that I don't have peanut butter or crumbs in my beard. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where I was eating lunch. Peanut butter sandwich on toast, very good, basic, life-affirming. Anyways, yeah, we got 16 millimeter films to show you. I'm outside. Next week, tentatively, we're going to move the 16 millimeter scanner to where we are at in the basement at our house, so that maybe I can start doing shows and streaming stuff live as we transfer it, because we have so many films. Oh my God, so many films, and I want you to be there and watch them with me. Let's learn about some conquering roads. Is this a jam handy? Maybe so.
What's wrong with this picture? A covered wagon on a modern boulevard is out of place. Old-fashioned transportation on a modern highway. Here is another picture that has something wrong with it. Modern transportation on an old-fashioned highway. The common, everyday spectacle of modern traffic on roads that are as out of date as the covered wagon. Early automobiles were built for one purpose: transportation from place to place. But from plain utility, engineering features have developed through the years. Ease and comfort of travel have advanced with the power and speed of up-to-date motor cars. Cars have been designed with improved pickup for passing with greater safety on narrow roads. They have been built with extra power and speed enough for even the best roads built today. Cars today have been designed to ride comfortably even on the bad roads we still have, because they can absorb the bumps without disturbing the passengers. They can stop quickly and safely on any road. Cars have progressed, but many roads have stood still. Roads that are not so modern as the traffic they carry cause congestion. Congested city streets hinder and delay the movement of traffic, cause confusion at busy, crowded corners. The careful driver realizes that he cannot drive on out-of-date roads in the same way that he can safely drive on our finest highways. On roads like these, we slow down and avoid the hazards of blind crossings. We drive cautiously at railroad crossings. By limiting our speed to the condition of the road, we reduce the hazards of such out-of-date roads. No highway is the place for reckless speed. The driver who must race should do his driving on a racetrack. Roads are getting better. Many highways have been designed that eliminate dangers and delays. In almost every city and county in the United States, great progress in road building is being made by the highway engineers and public-spirited citizens who realize the great contribution that improved highways are making to progress and safety. Roads have been engineered that are as safe as the modern automobile. Wide, straight roads with special lanes reserved for passing have been laid out so that thousands of motorists can drive on them in heavy traffic swiftly with comfort and safety. Curves have been scientifically banked to make the car hold a road easily at usual driving speeds. Lighting experts have contributed their study of the problem of lighting street intersections. Many highways have been lighted with new and improved methods. Roads that have already been built can be widened and made safer. The state of New Jersey uses fire hose to spread apart these 500-ton slabs of concrete. The moving is repeated until a wide space between the slabs separates traffic into lanes with a landscaped parkway strip in the center. Parkways separate traffic going in opposite directions into smoothly moving one-way streams. In the city, too, advances in road construction bring about savings in time and the elimination of trouble. On the ground, we can see what modern roads mean to our own comfort and safety. From the air, the modern road builders can see what such improvements can mean in mass handling of cars. We can see from the air how the wide, straight, smooth surfaced highway keeps both passenger and commercial traffic moving. We can see how highways with separate lanes for traffic speed all motorists on their way. Every such advance in road construction makes possible greater accessibility of the farms, with greater freedom for tourists and trailers. Heavy trucks are able to move on the highways without interfering with other traffic. Where highways cross, rotary traffic circles have been designed. Such designs enable cars approaching from all directions to make turns without confusion. And even at very complex intersections, new types of circles keep cars moving with speed and safety. The four-leaf clover design handles heavy traffic at intersections. The cloverleaf eliminates left-hand turns where two full streams of traffic cut across each other. Variations of the cloverleaf have been developed at congested corners. In the country, separating intersecting thoroughfares by overhead bridges at the crossing points makes for safety. Because one road is elevated above the other, through highway crossings have been made safe. While in the city, grade separation means a smooth flow of traffic at even the busiest hours. The elimination of railroad grade crossings has been one of the most important safety developments. Railroad underpasses have proved their value in saving time and lives wherever they have been built. A network of roads and underpasses leading to the George Washington Bridge across the Hudson River between New York and New Jersey greatly simplifies the handling of traffic. Bridge approaches are wide enough to carry traffic volumes not only for today, but for years to come. Modern bridges are strong enough and wide enough to carry traffic streams far heavier than those of the average road. The new bridges, such as the Triborough Bridge at New York, will do away with the bottlenecks of traffic and free drivers from delay over miles of approaching roads. The Pulaski Aerial Skyway from Jersey City to Newark, New Jersey, carries thousands of cars a day. Highways like this at Alexandria in Louisiana are the road builders' answer to the advancements made by automobile engineers. With these new highways come new advances in engineering, new standards of comfort, new records of economy, and above all, the savings of man's greatest asset, time. Throughout the United States, the American public has shown its interest in the work of improving the highways. We must all encourage the road builders of today who have given us new roads on the ground, contributing so much to public safety. New roads over the ground, adding to the usefulness of the entire road system. New roads under the water, saving time for the motorists. And new roads over the water to keep America's safety record the finest in the world.
Of course an auto manufacturer is going to be doing a cheerleading film about roads and building infrastructure for cars. Of course they are. What are we thinking? Of course. Yeah. So there it is. It's all laid out for you. Very little public transportation. Very little mass transportation. It's all build roads for cars and trucks. And then buy GM cars and trucks. What were we expecting? This next film, so I feel like I might have shown a film with a similar title that was made by Centron called The Gossip. This one was made by Sid Davis. Early on, very early Sid Davis. This is also called The Gossip. And we get to see how gossiping damaged the reputation of a young, friendly girl.
Pretty clever bird, the parrot. He can actually talk, pronounce words. Of course, he has no idea what the words mean, so we never take him seriously. Unfortunately, that's not true with gossips. They use words just as carelessly as the parrot, but sometimes we take them seriously, and often innocent persons are harmed. You see, gossips don't stop to think that words are dangerous. They influence our national life, and in war, they are powerful weapons. Gossips toss words around as carelessly as parrots, with no more sense of the harm they can do. Did I hear somebody say gossiping is monopolized by women? Far from it. Anyone who uses words carelessly, especially to talk behind someone's back, is a gossip. Let me tell you a little story about a gossip. This is Marion High, my school. I'm the principal, George Eastmore. There were some people in my office this particular morning, Mr. and Mrs. Gage and their daughter, Jean. They told me Jean would have to leave school. Why? Because of the malicious gossip about her. I was shocked, and I asked for details to see if we could do something about it. We began talking, even though Jean thought it was already too late. Mr. and Mrs. Gage had opened a grocery store at the start of the term, and Jean helped out after school. Usually it's difficult for a boy or girl entering a new school to get acquainted and make friends, but in Jean's case it was easy. She's a very good artist. Her first drawing won a school award, and the prize-winning picture was posted on the bulletin board. That seemed to open the doors for her. All the girls were interested and anxious to meet her. The first friend she made was Janice Nelson. Of course, Marion High is coeducational, and the other half of our student body is always interested in a pretty, popular new girl. So while Jean's new friend Janice Nelson was introducing her to some of the other girls, Jack Monroe and Bill Ellis, our two ranking Casanovas, were making a little bet as to which would make the first date with her. Bill Ellis made the first move. He was waiting on the steps when Janice and Jean left school that afternoon and soon was off to a running start in the competition. Jack wasn't called the best broken field runner in Marion history for nothing. Besides, he still had some trumps in his hand. Like an open convertible, which had helped quite a few times in the past. Bill didn't know it yet, but he was about to be outmaneuvered by an old trick, the fake flat tire. Jack was well in the lead now. He drove 12 blocks out of his way to drop Janice off first. Then he took his time getting Jean back to the grocery store. Jean introduced Jack to her mother and father, and presto, he'd won. He had a date with Jean for Friday night. From the time Jack called for her and all during the afternoon and evening, Jean kept thinking to herself how lucky she was that her father had moved his store here so she could attend Marion. She was a brand new student, and already she'd won the art contest, made a whole circle of friends, had been asked to pledge the girls' club, and now here she was out with the most popular boy in school. But when they drove home, Jean began to learn a little more about Jack. His popularity had gone to his head. He was completely sure of himself, confident that none of the girls could resist him. Jean's slap didn't hurt his face, but it certainly injured his pride. He tried to laugh it off, but he was thinking that he'd have to get even. Jack didn't lose any time giving the other boys a highly colored version of the date. To regain his self-confidence and build himself up in their eyes, he added a few details, remarks about Jean, completely untrue. But then, gossips seldom worry about the truth. Now the gossip began to spread. Bill Ellis colored it a little more and passed it on. Then Christine Manners took over. First, she used her lunch hour to tell the story to every girl who would listen, and that included practically every girl in the school. When she got home, she took over the telephone to call all those she'd missed. Yes, gossip spreads like wildfire, especially with the help of girls like Christine. And by the end of the day, the harm was done. Jean's reputation was ruined. The next morning, Christine still wasn't through. She'd been jealous of the new girl's popularity and talent from the start. Now was her chance. But the picture gave Jean her first inkling that something was wrong. She knew it had been torn down deliberately. She asked her friend Janice if she'd done something wrong, but Janice was too uncomfortable, embarrassed to tell Jean to her face. Everyone took pains to ignore her. She felt like an outcast, yet couldn't imagine why. Jean was hurt and bewildered. Marion High had seemed so wonderful only last week. Now it was like a completely different school. Gossip. Jean was lonely and miserable all week, but she was still hopeful that once she was initiated into the girls' club, things would be better. However, Jean had already been blackballed even before the club's scavenger hunt had started. But instead of telling her, the club president had made Jean's assignments far more difficult than the other girls, hoping Jean would fail, thus disqualifying herself. Not knowing this, Jean started out on the scavenger hunt as eagerly as any of the others. She was willing to work twice as hard as the other pledges to be initiated. The rest of the pledges had finished their assignments and had been notified of their acceptance before Jean returned. Now the girls were really embarrassed. Jean came back with every one of her assignments completed. What could she do next? Nothing, Christine told her. She'd been blackballed. She wasn't wanted. Jean couldn't understand. She'd done her assignments as well as any of them. Why had she been rejected? Christine said Jean knew very well why, because they didn't want her kind of girl in their club. Jean still didn't understand. Janice finally had to explain that they all knew about her, about Jack's story. Jean was stunned. How could anybody believe that about her? When Mr. and Mrs. Gage came home, Jean told them what had happened, that she hadn't been accepted by the club because of the gossip about her. She said she was quitting school. So that's the story she told me. That's why the Gages came to see me. They agreed with Jean. It would be better if she left school. But I asked them to wait. Give me a chance to do what I could. Gossip is difficult to fight. You have to go right to the source and stamp it out. That's exactly what I did. I called in Jack Monroe, asked him point blank if he was the gossip. Jack was surprised. He thought only women gossiped. Men just, well, talk. He admitted he'd started the talk, but he never realized the harm it would do. When I had finished explaining what his loose talk had done to Jean, Jack asked me what he could do, and I told him a way, the only way. He thought it over. It wasn't going to be easy. It would be embarrassing, and we both knew it. But he finally agreed. Give Jack credit. He went through with it. His voice broke a few times, but he managed to tell them all that there was nothing to the gossip, that he had made up the story and was to blame for everything. But that wasn't quite right. I told him that anyone who listens to gossip is almost as much to blame as the person who spreads it. We were going to discuss the problem in assembly, make the whole school aware of the danger, and make sure that no Marion student would ever again be hurt the way Jean was. The next day, the whole student body realized what they had done to Jean. Now they wanted to make it up to her. She made a fresh start and was soon one of Marion's most popular girls, one of our real leaders. What could have been another gossip tragedy had been a happy ending. But don't forget this. There needn't have been so much as a near tragedy if our students, instead of imitating this bird, the gossipy parrot, had instead copied three far wiser creatures, the three little monkeys, who see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil.
I wish that scenario really happened. I have a feeling it doesn't. High school, man. High school sucks. And you can imagine the echo chamber that social media. It's hard. Very hard. All right, let's go back in time. Let's go way back in time. And learn about some mythology, some gossip from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. With some, I don't know, it's kind of interesting special effects. We'll see. I mean, it's educational film budget, so enjoy.
The people of ancient Greece and Rome found much about the world and man that they did not understand. Power forces seemed to cause the wild waves of the sea, the thunder in the sky, and the earth's changing seasons. The Greeks invented gods to explain these mysteries. They made up stories which explained emotions and taught moral lessons. We call these stories myths. According to the myths, Mars was the home of the gods. Jupiter was their king, and his anger caused thunder and lightning. In the watery depths of the ocean dwelt Neptune, god of the sea. When Neptune was displeased with mankind, he made the sea rough and stormy. Ceres was the goddess of the harvest. It was she who made the fields rich with grain, the trees heavy with fruit, and the world bright with flowers. The change of seasons was explained by a myth about this goddess and her beloved daughter, Proserpina. Deep within the earth, far below the green fields of Ceres and Proserpina, lived Pluto, god and king of the underworld. Pluto was a lonely king, ruling his dark kingdom without a queen. One day, Pluto rose from the underworld to search for a wife. And from the shadows, he saw Proserpina. Down to his underground kingdom, he took the frightened girl, and there he placed her upon a throne to reign forever as his queen. Helpless, Proserpina grieved over the loss of her mother and the sunlit earth above. A stranger to darkness, she feared this land of endless night, the dwelling place of the spirits of the dead. Over the earth, the heartbroken Ceres wandered, searching for a daughter she feared she would never see again. With each passing day, the girl's sorrow increased. King Pluto could do nothing to bring back her happiness. All over the world, the once green forests and fields withered and died. For in her sorrow, Ceres neglected the plants on the earth. But while the trees of the earth died, a pomegranate tree in the underworld lived and bore fruit. Proserpina did not know that whoever ate food in the underworld could never leave. Famine spread over the earth, and the gods of Olympus feared that Ceres would let mankind perish unless her daughter was returned to her. So Mercury, the messenger of the gods, was sent to rescue the girl. Pluto would not permit Proserpina to leave his kingdom forever, but he agreed to a compromise. Since she had eaten part of it, she must spend part of each year as queen of the land of the dead. So it is that every year, while Proserpina is in the underworld, Ceres is sad. Everything dies, and it is winter. And springtime will not come back to the earth again until her daughter returns. According to Greek and Roman myths, the gods controlled not only nature, but also man's behavior and emotions. Love, one of the strongest emotions, was caused by Venus, the beautiful goddess of love, and her son Cupid, the god of love. With his bow and magic arrows, Cupid could make anyone fall in love, even Apollo, the god of the sun. Struck by Cupid's arrow, Apollo was destined to fall in love with the first woman he saw, a young girl named Daphne. Cupid had another kind of arrow, an arrow which caused hatred and fear, and he decided to play a trick on Apollo and Daphne. Struck by the arrow, Daphne became very frightened of Apollo. Cupid's arrows were very powerful. While one caused Apollo to pursue Daphne in love, the other made Daphne run from him in fear. When Daphne saw Apollo coming closer, she became so terrified, she begged the gods to help her. Sadly, Apollo watched the girl transformed by the gods into a laurel tree. As a reminder of his first love, Apollo took a small branch from the tree and made a laurel wreath to be worn always as a crown of honor. To the tree, he gave eternal life. And since that time, laurel trees have been forever green. Many Greek and Roman myths had a moral to teach people how they should behave. One of these is the story of Bellerophon, a man who became extremely proud and ambitious. One day, Bellerophon saw Pegasus, the flying horse. No man had ever been able to tame Pegasus, but Bellerophon was favored by the gods, and he became the first man to ride the flying horse. There lived at that time a fiery monster called the Chimera, which caused much death and destruction in the land. With his winged horse, Bellerophon set out to slay the monster. With the help of his flying horse, Bellerophon accomplished many heroic deeds. Great was his fame, and he became very proud. But one day he became too ambitious. He attempted to fly to Mount Olympus, the home of the gods, where mortal man was forbidden to go. When Jupiter, the mightiest of the gods, saw Bellerophon approaching, he became very angry, and he caused Pegasus to throw his proud rider. Although Bellerophon's life was spared, he was lamed by his fall. Lonely and despised by the gods, he never saw the flying horse again. There are many other myths which tell of heroic adventures and teach a moral lesson, or explain nature's mysteries and human behavior. These myths are part of our heritage from the people of ancient Greece and Rome.
So it wasn't quite Clash of the Titans, but yeah, it wasn't bad. Yeah, Greek myths and Harryhausen like this. I think that's a requirement. But it wasn't bad. You know, they had a limited budget. Film associates, they did what they could with the budget they had. Yeah, and Cupid was a jerk. Screw that guy. Man. Okay. Here we go. This next film is a celebration of American industry. You know, that's something that we need. American industry needs to be bolstered because it's kind of not doing so great. So this is a film called Greater Goal: Human Dividends from American Industry, Rah, rah, rah.
The people of ancient Greece and Rome found much about the world and man that they did not understand.
Listen to the heartbeat of a great industry. Textile making has been an accompanying sound effect to all of American history. For this nation's first manufactured product was cloth, our first and therefore our oldest industry. And after more than 3 centuries, textile manufacture today constitutes one of our largest industries. The wide variety of fabrics that pour out of textile mills plays a great part in your daily life. A far bigger role perhaps than you realize. In your home and in every home, rich or poor, from coast to coast. Whether the belle of the senior prom is turned out by Schiaparelli or by your own home sewing, you live with and by textiles. From infancy through all the years of your life, and everywhere you look, from the drapes at your windows to the spread and sheets on your bed. At every hour, at every meal, textiles serve you well, protecting you from infection and from the elements. When you want to keep the sunshine out, or when you want to let the sunshine in for health or joy, you sit on one kind of textiles and walk on another. And you walk in textiles too. The lining of your shoes is fabric. And when you ride, you sit on textiles, comfortable and safe as you speed along on tired cords of tough textiles. Textiles are part of your play also, from yachting sails to tennis balls. Even the music you love is sometimes made with textiles. And what helps your garden to grow? Why, water from rubber-covered fabric hose. America's famed mass production moves on conveyor belts of woven fabric. And industry sends its messages and keeps its records through textile fabrics. When war threatens, our armed forces could not move without textiles. Clothing, tents, ropes, packs, an endless variety of woven materials. In this age of global strategy, our military leaders must face and solve problems never even dreamed of before. The way a soldier is equipped may be the difference between life and death in battle. He must have what it takes to survive in and to get himself out of the most precarious situations. Cold weather clothing, especially developed by America's textile industry, plays a vital role in any national emergency. Warmth with lightness, insulation by many layers of tightly woven fabrics. This wardrobe of survival is but one example of how all American industry, created in peace for peaceful uses, is today this nation's greatest bulwark of strength. But when you think of textiles, you're most likely to think first of dress materials. Even the latest fashions look for inspiration to this oldest industry that is ever new. The amazing industry which produces the soft, luxurious velvet with the same skillful ease with which it makes this heavy-duty canvas duck, a delicate satin, or belting material for industry, printed designs for dresses or designs woven right in, thick, soft blankets, or gossamer thin curtain materials. Every pattern and every type for every conceivable use. And behind this versatile array of beauty and service stand 1.25 million Americans, the heart of the textile industry, one of the nation's largest employers. Supplied by the products of farm, ranch, and industry from every corner of the world, textile workers turn out an almost endless variety of fabrics. In more than 2,000 yarn and fabric producing and finishing plants, these people make the materials and furnish the inspiration for tens of thousands of designers, cutters, clothing manufacturers, and distributors, who in turn stock the shelves of hundreds of thousands of stores to satisfy the needs of America's millions. From the mills that mark its historic beginning, the textile industry has been built on the American principle of free competition. Down through the years, its progress has been a steady march forward, in step with the nation's own dynamic economic development. It has known depressions, yet one only has to look to see the typical American pattern of success. In textiles, as in all of our industries, the race to compete has led, as it inevitably must, to better mills, better methods, better men, and eventually to a better way of life. The United States is today the one shining hope of free peoples everywhere. The world has turned to us in its need for food and fiber from our vast agricultural resources, for our steel and our oil. But they seek something else here also. They seek the way of life which has created this industrial might. Strength deeply rooted in personal freedom. A productive strength far greater than the sum total of all our foundries, factories, and fields. Former generations once took American industry for granted. The bigger it became, the more impersonal it seemed. It took the threat of world destruction to make us realize this nation's greatness lies behind our mill and factory walls, and that each of us has a tremendous personal stake in its prosperity and continued growth. So for the next few minutes, let's look into the heart of the textile industry, not just as a trip through a mill, but as one living, throbbing example of America's real wealth and material and social progress. This is cotton arriving at the mill. At some other mill it might be wool, jute, silk, rayon, nylon, or today any of the several newer man-made fibers from the chemist's laboratory. However, the basic methods of textile manufacture are essentially the same for all fibers, and the processes and machinery called the cotton system, which you will see here, are typical of the workings of all branches of the industry. The raw cotton, partially cleaned, is wound in thick blankets onto large rolls like king-size editions of the cotton in your medicine chest. These machines are called pickers. Their job is to remove waste still present in the cotton. It certainly doesn't look much like yarn here, does it? Nevertheless, it is yarn we're about to make, step by painstaking step. Next, carding. This machine passes the cotton between fine wire brushes, which clean away the last bits of foreign matter, eliminating the shorter fibers and shaping the remaining longer ones into a filmy web-like sheet. The machine then draws it into finger-thick ropes called slivers. Now a number of slivers, 24 of them here, are combined, laid side by side, forming another type of roll called a lap. This is the first of several operations which combine and draw out the fibers on their way to becoming yarn. Here began several continuous processes called drawing and roving, where the combined fibers are drawn out still more and given a slight twist, gradually reducing the thickness while increasing the tensile strength. At last we come to the final step in yarn making, spinning. The rope-like strands of loose cotton fibers you saw a moment ago, here at high speed get the last drawing out and the final tight twist, bringing it to any size required for weaving the many different kinds of fabrics. That portion of the spun yarn to be used for the warp or lengthwise threads in weaving goes now to the automatic spooling machine, where it is transferred from bobbins onto cheeses or spools. Hundreds of these spools of white or dyed yarn are then placed in the warping creel, positioning each thread for winding onto the huge warp beam. These threads must be wound on the beam exactly parallel and precisely the right distance apart. Next, to the slasher, a multiple battery which combines several warp beams into one loom beam. Here the yarn also gets a sizing bath, a starchy coating to protect it from the rubbing and chafing of the shuttle and harnesses in the weaving operation. We are ready at last to begin making cloth as the beam is set aside until needed in the weaving room. But first, each individual end of yarn is drawn through the harness, the apparatus which raises and lowers the lengthwise yarns to make a path for the crosswise flight of the shuttle back and forth. The crosswise or filling threads are fed from bobbins carried by the shuttle in its flights across the loom between the separated warp threads. A rotary battery holds 20 or more bobbins, supplying a continuous flow of yarn. The loom is the basic tool of the textile industry, a marvel of intricate and high-speed precision, and a classic example of the industrial efficiency that has made ours the strongest and wealthiest nation on earth. Here, rayon is being woven on the same type of loom. Nylon or any of the new man-made yarns can be used as readily and as easily as cotton. This is an Arctic combat clothing lining being made from a special acetate yarn in a ripstop weave. This strange machine is a jacquard loom, which weaves the most complicated designs right into the cloth. Each warp thread is raised and lowered by a mechanism controlled by pattern cards, punched like player piano rolls. One jacquard loom does the work. When Joseph Jacquard perfected this machine in 1805, his life was threatened by fellow workers who feared for their jobs. Instead, it created more jobs by lowering costs and bringing this highly prized material within reach of all. Every inch of cloth is examined at these lighted inspection tables where even the slightest imperfection is spotted. The material is still in a gray or unfinished state, a long way yet from being ready for your use. It goes now to the finishing plant where the first step is bleaching. This particular process is called rope bleaching, the newest, quickest, and best. It puts miles of material through a chemical saturation, then washings, steaming, and more washings. It comes out snowy white, ready to be made into sheets or shirts or whatever. For colored material, sometimes the yarn itself is dyed first under high pressure, but mostly the color is imparted to the woven cloth. This is continuous vat dyeing, a series of heat-controlled color baths in which the dye is applied and fixed in one operation. Jig dyeing wine cloth alternately from one roll to another through the dye baths. Of course, not all materials are solid colors. Many have designs. Here, a copper roller is etched with a pattern for machine printing, just as a printer prepares his plates for reproducing the pictures in your magazines. In operation, each color is picked up by the high places on the engraved roller. The cloth goes through a process which fixes the colors permanently in the fabric. Some materials require a special finish. Here, a napping machine gives a soft, fluffy surface to baby blankets. A series of brushes carefully raise some of the fibers above the body of the cloth. Glazing, as in chintz for slipcovers or curtains, is done by coating the material with a pliable film of starch or plastic that is later polished by smooth, high-pressure rollers. And here's the finished material, white, colored, printed, napped, or glazed, wrapped onto bolts, ready now to be made into the 1,001 garments or products which you and your family use every day, every hour of your life. It's on its way to other kinds of mills and plants, to sewing rooms, dressmakers, upholsterers, and retail shops the world over. But the real story of an industry is what it means to people. The American worker's power to produce has created a standard of living that is as much a part of any modern industrial story as mills or machines. Textiles in all its branches employs 1.25 million people. With their families, that means 5 to 6 millions, 1 out of every 25 Americans who look to textiles for their livelihood. This is, in the main, a small-town industry. New England, textiles' birthplace in America, is the stronghold of woolen and worsted goods. Today, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, and Virginia constitute the biggest cotton textile producing area, though the Middle Atlantic states have their share of mills. And there is rapid growth toward the southwest. In the typical small textile town, the mill is literally the focal point for the entire community. Life revolves around it. The modern textile community, particularly in the newer areas of the industry's expansion, bears little or no resemblance to old-fashioned concepts of a mill town. It's a thriving place whose prosperity stems from one source, the mill's payroll. Salaries and wages paid out of profits provide the spending power, which in turn promptly creates profits for others. This is a simple example of how America's free economy works to multiply wealth in a town as in a nation. Locally or nationally, there must first be basic profits from a basic industry, the financial core which splits and spreads in a chain reaction of many profits and security for all. Security is something a man or an industry must build, and it's never merely a matter of dollars. Success in any major industry today depends not only on the quality of its product, but also on the way of life it can support. Not all of the older textile towns are as pretty as these, but with the industry spreading out, constantly creating its own better world, scenes like these are fast becoming typical. The production of this mill does not stop with cloth. Perhaps its most important product is this: a comfortable American home, a place and an atmosphere a man can earn for his family and for his future. In America, we measure our aims not alone in dollars, but in personal contentment and satisfaction. Leisure is an important byproduct of our capacity to work together as one great industrial team, constantly building a better life and creating the time to enjoy it. Good mill management does not stop at the mill door. A company picnic is a common example of industry as a social enterprise, and there's nothing cynical in saying that this pleasant scene of people eating barbecued chicken is a symbol of good business. For good fellowship begets cooperation, and cooperation is what turns out more and better goods, means more sales, more profits, more wages, and more fun for everybody. Country club-like facilities such as these are usually operated by the employees themselves. They're simply an investment in people, even more important than investments in mills and materials. Modern ideas of management in the textile industry very often include new swimming pools right along with new looms and machinery. Whenever possible to do so, away from established industrial centers, America's oldest industry is creating a new atmosphere. The reason is both simple and practical. This, the good life, is also good business. A full sports schedule makes for a full production schedule. The fishing's apt to be pretty good in the very shadow of the mill. And beyond the mill, in the town itself, are other fruits of men's labor. Faith in the American way of doing things, with all its past mistakes and its still to be corrected imperfections, has produced and is producing a better living than anywhere else on earth. Our future, yours and mine, is linked to industry whether we work in a mill, on a farm, or in an office. We're benefited by industry, not alone by the material goods it produces, but by the many social gains it creates and supports. Any hospital is a social gain, but this one is even more because it really belongs to those who will use it. The modern textile town's productivity, its independence, its solvency, make it a pretty healthy place to begin life. An important investment in the textile industry lies in education and research, a basic phase of preparation for a free nation's ever youthful minds for profitable careers. And in the realm of higher education, the textile industry is unique. 10 textile schools at college level throughout the country turn out trained young men and women, well prepared to use the opportunities of an industry which, though the oldest known to man, is always looking for a better way. The freedom of fresh minds with know-how has always been the greatest single asset in all American industry. New minds are constantly coming up with new methods and machinery. This is a spectrophotometer which scientifically checks the trueness of color. The Pilgrim Fathers who brought the industry to America would surely be amazed at these electronic devices for controlling quality. Textiles earnings are constantly being poured back into better ways of making a finer product at a lower cost. The secret of America's leadership in manufacturing. Last year, this industry reinvested $600 million in plant and equipment. Here, a revolutionary type of loom is being installed. It has no shuttle or bobbins. An automatic arm or finger draws the crosswise threads into the warp shed. And during any trip through modern textile mills, you will have noticed something else. In the newer ones particularly, you'll be impressed by how bright and cheerful everything is. Lighting engineers have brought artificial daylight to every corner of this huge winding room. And the indoor climate is as near perfect as science can make it. Air conditioning has been a great boon to textile making, especially in the South. In some plants, even the wall colors are scientifically chosen, usually restful pastels. Such improvements pay dividends in human comfort and convenience, which in turn produce a better finished product, the natural result of people working without undue stress or strain. And today, textile workers easily perform tasks that were once back-breaking chores. Mechanical lifters and overhead conveyors now transport loads that used to be done by human strength. A simple flick of a switch moves this heavy loom beam. The remarkable ingenuity that characterizes America's industries is to be found in full measure in textiles. In laboratories like this, unending research also claims an important portion of textiles' earnings. New products for tomorrow are born, and an even closer watch is kept on the quality of today's production. Here, in tests that check everything from color fastness to tear resistance, an industry keeps itself always on the alert. Here, too, are to be found the textiles of the future. Remarkable developments that transform an ordinary dress material like this into a treated cloth that miraculously withstands stains. These tissue ginghams look exactly alike, but the scientifically treated material on the left sheds water like the proverbial duck's back. Even in damp, muggy weather, a gown of this material will retain its crisp, fresh look. Here's a newly developed material which needs only to be hung up, and without the aid of a pressing iron, recovers its smooth, unwrinkled beauty. Textile research is constantly working on projects which, to you, are everyday problems. These are only a few examples of modern textiles that are coming out of communities like this, where in the comfort of his home, the textile worker lives amid the results of his own productivity. His security and independence really mean something because he has earned them, and all around him is the solid evidence of the rewarding industrial and social enterprise of which he is the mainspring. All around him are indications that America is learning to use her industrial resources to ever greater advantage in the midst of new and challenging social responsibilities. The products of this great industry go out across the broad highways of the nation and even beyond our national borders. World trade that works both ways, for even as shipments marked "Made in the USA" go to far-off ports, we receive from equally strange-sounding places the raw materials we need. Long staple cotton from Egypt, wool from Australia, cashmere from India, alpaca from South America, flax from Europe, silk from Japan. As the loaded ships sail to help create a better world across the 7 seas, they are contributing also to the preservation of an even better world here at home. People who made cloth even before America was discovered today beat a pathway by sea to our shores. A tribute to the skill of the American worker, his looms and his mills, to a way of life in which human beings are the masters of the machines, to a system in which our vast industrial resources are but the generating force of the greatest social enterprise the world has ever seen. The highest standard of living in all history has been earned, bought, and paid for by a nation's capacity to produce. More important than mills and machinery is the man who has made know-how into a fine art. The man everyone relies upon to make things go. Perhaps the most important man in the world. And the world's best hope for a brighter future, the American worker, master of production.
Textiles. So when I moved from suburban Dayton, Ohio to not necessarily rural North Carolina, but close to rural, like an hour outside of Charlotte in Stanley County, Albemarle, there were several textile mills. Wiscasset was the biggest one, but then there were smaller ones. And, I mean, they dominated the landscape. There was so many people working there. And we saw the steady decline, and now there's no textile. I don't think there's any textile factories in Albemarle anymore, but it was this big economic thing, and then it stopped becoming that big economic thing. And people were like, well, it's people in China that are doing this. And it's like, no, how did the Chinese learn about all this? Like, who funded this? Like, this was American investors saying, like, we don't want to pay, we're paying too much for the American worker and we want to go somewhere else. And so that's what they did. And so I think Albemarle reeled. It's only now, I think, that I don't even know if it's now is getting back to where it was as far as industry goes. I think it has a little bit of, what would I say? Like a little tourist thing, because it's right near the Uaris and Baden Lake and all that. But yeah, so it's interesting to see that. But man, beautiful assembly line footage there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I very much appreciate your comments, and I appreciate showing you films. And together, it's like we're in the same room together, although I'm outside, so maybe you're all outside with me. But if you like what you saw, you can certainly support us by hitting the thumbs up button or the like button or the subscribe button. You can also watch other films that we've been putting online. We're averaging putting probably 20 to 30 online a day. And we're pulling stuff because we've scanned, like, of the AV Geeks collection, we probably scanned like 3,000 or 4,000 films. And of the Prelinger collection, we probably scanned 4,000 to 5,000. And so what we're doing is we're going through, our channel has, 7,000 videos? Well, we're going through and seeing what we missed, because there were some things that we did that aren't up there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm adding a bunch of stuff. And so some of the stuff we're showing on our daily show is from that. And when you watch that, there's advertising, and we get a little bit of money for that. And if we keep bouncing up the amount of advertising we make a month, then that helps pay for our storage units. Another way you can support us is pay us directly via the Super Thanks button, or go into ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. And why is that? Because we're paying close to $2,000 in storage units right now, where all our films are currently being housed until we finish working on the archive. But regardless, thank you so much for being there. It was a rough week, and you guys made it easier. It's still rough, but it's rough with you guys. So thank you so much for your eyeballs and your comments. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Take care.